Welcome everyone to today's webinar on the organizer. My name is Dimple Kirk. I am one of the support members and I will be taking you through this webinar today. First things, you do have a control panel to interact with us. Please ask any questions along the way. These will be answered at the end of the webinar. And if I can't answer them during the webinar, I will respond to you via email. Please make sure that your screen is on full so that you do get the best image. The first thing that we're going to talk about during this webinar today is extracting information from IFCs that you bring in to Tekla without converting that information that can be later on used with the interactive model. So here I have an IFC that I've imported in, and if I inquire on one of these items, I can see a set of information. Now, this model already has phases set for the items, and I want to use those phases within my interactive model once I convert the IFC. So we're going to create some attributes so that we can identify which items are in which phases and use that within our model. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to open up the organizer. So if we go to Manage and Organizer, this is our basic setup at present. Now, within the organizer, you do have the project section. So this is being used quite a lot to extract information for IFC purposes of the item's location. So we're going to set up the boundary boxes for this project so that we can later on export that information to IFC. So if I go to Site and Building, right click, I can then define the model area, which is define my boundary box. Now at present, it's already started to input the information as per your grid sets. So I'm going to leave them as they are at present. Now, if I select this, you can see here that my boundary doesn't actually incorporate the entire model. So I'm going to need to change some of these values to make sure that the boundary box is incorporating all the items within this model at present. So I'm going to change that to minus 7,000, modify, and then I'll hit that boundary again. And now we can see that all of those items have now been incorporated. And that's what we want to see. So this will then automatically give you location sets for every item within the model, which I'll show you later on as we start to model correctly. So I'm going to add some sections. So I'm going to add 2 sections to this model, again, based on the grid lines that are already in this model at present. So I'm going to go from grid line 1 to 3, and then from 3 to 5. And in my Y direction, section A, so if I click on that at present, that incorporates everything within that area. Now I don't need my -7 for the second section, so I'm going to change that to 0, and my Z is correct throughout. And then I'm going to add some floors. Now my floor system is going to be based on my grids, and it will look at the grids and see what levels you've created and automatically fill that information in. So I'm now going to modify that information. And within the organizer, we now have our sections and floors created. Because this is an IFC, that information is not automatically populated at present, but as we start to convert the model, you'll start to see this information will start to fill in. So that's our first section. I'll redraw to get rid of those boxes. Now I'm going to set up a category that is going to see the IFC phasing information, and it will automatically populate for me which item is in which phase. And to do this, I'm going to go to this category section here, and I'm going to add in a new category. Now, the information set that I want to see is this. So I want to see what items are in what phase. And the attribute the IFC is using is this common phase attribute. So this isn't something that's already in the system at present. So we're going to need to add it into the organizer so that it can look and check the model to see what item is in what phase. So I'm going to go to the open settings. Now, any external references that you add into this model, you can check their attributes, but the word external has to be put into the property set. So we can see here that we already have some in the systems that are commonly used, but phase isn't one of those. So I'm gonna need to add this into the system so that we can use it as a property set. So I'm gonna go to custom, property. I copy and pasted the attribute that I wanted to see from the IFC, but now I need to make sure that we have external dot before the attribute name. The units are no units, it is text and it is a template we are adding in the information. And we just need to make sure there's no spaces, otherwise it won't let you save this information. So we will OK that. Now in the property templates, we do already have an IFC template set up that does look at some external property sets. So I'm going to add this new phase in because I want to see what items are in what phase. So I'm going to delete section and floors as I'm not really interested in that at present. And then I'm going to add a new column. Now in this external attribute list on the left here, we can see that that phase property set that I've created is now showing in there, and I'm going to drag that into this new column. And we can modify that so it holds onto the information. Now when I select something in the model, we'll be able to see that that phase attribute is now showing me some information within that list. Now to try and make it easier to see that information so that we can convert the IFC using that phase information to make things easier for us, we're going to create a property set. Now in here, I'm going to add a new category. I'm going to double click on the custom category section. I'm going to change the name to IFC phases. Now the second area here, I need to indicate where I want the organizer to get that information from. Are we obtaining that information from a Tekla model, or are we doing it from an IFC? So I'm going to click on all references. And then within the next category down here is what information do I want the categories to be broken down by. So we're going to search for the property set that I've created, which is phases. And the property template is how do I want to see this information in the object browser, and I want to use the IFC template that we've created. So I'm going to now modify that information. And now very quickly I can see that there's 3 phases within this entire IFC. And those are the items that have been phased in this IFC that we have. Now I'm going to use that information to create actual model phases that we can then extract information from and start to model, and then use that to export to an IFC as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is I want to create some phases in this model, I can see that we have 3 phases. So I need 3 phases in Phase Manager. And now I am going to convert this IFC that I have and automatically place them into the correct phases as per the information already in the IFC. So the easiest way to do this is make sure that the phase is correct. So my current phase at the moment is phase 1. And I want to convert all of the items in this IFC that are stating that they're in phase 1 at present. So in the bottom here, I'm going to do select in model, and I'm going to hit my phase 1. So now that I've selected phase 1, the phase 1 items have been highlighted in the IFC. So I'm now going to convert those items. They've highlighted in the change list as well. And we're going to apply those changes. Then I'm going to move on to phase 2. So I'm going to make sure that phase 2 is set to current. I'm now going to select the phase 2 from the IFC. And I'm going to convert those as well. And now my phase 3. So phase 3 is now set to current. And I'm now converting just the items that are in phase 3 in this IFC. So now that's my model converted. I'm going to close the conversion manager. I'm going to switch my IFC off. We now have our model. I'm now going to check these phases. So I'm going to go to my representation, show all phases, and modify. And we've got 3 phases in there, as we should do. So that's all correct and ready to go. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I am going to create some filters so that we can filter out what's in this model now by actual model phases. Now, when we're using the organizer for model filtering, we have to be very specific about the filter setups, which is something that people have stated that they have found a little bit more confusing as to why it's bringing in information that they don't need. Now, the organizer sees every single object in the model as an object, so it will pick up welds and bolts and construction lines as it sees them as an object. So we have to be very specific as to what objects we're actually wanting to see. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the phase filter that we already have in the system. Now, to make this work correctly for the organizer, I'm going to have to add an extra row in here and state what object type I want to see. So in here, I'm going to add that the object type that I want to see, phase 1, is parts only. So I don't want to see the bolts and the welds or anything like that for phase 1 present. So the filter that we're creating is part specific. Now, to be able to see this in the organizer, we need to add this filter to the organizer template. So this little button here, make sure that the organizer is selected, and then we do a save as. I'm going to do the same thing for phase 2, and then save as. And then also the same thing for phase 3, as we have 3 phases in this current model. So that's my filters created. So now we can go back to the organizer, and I'm going to create a new property set. But this time I'm looking at the model information, not the IFC. So I'm going to turn this select objects in model off to no highlights or selection, as it does make the organizer faster. So now I'm going to double click on this custom category. I'm going to change this name to model phase 1. This time I need to indicate that the information that we're wanting to inquire on is part of the Tekla model. So in here, I need to state that it is the Tekla model that we're looking at. And then I need to choose which filter this category will be created on. And we're doing this as per phase 1. Now I can start trying to break the information down a little bit more. So I'm going to just look at the different profiles that are in phase 1. Now, obviously, this can be customized and tailored depending on how you need to set this up and what information you want to see. But this is just to give you a bit of an outline as to what can be done with it. And we're going to see this information in an assembly list. I'm now going to modify that category. And I'm going to synchronize that with the model. And now that is stating to me that these are the items in phase 1. These are the profile parts within that phase. Now you can see that there is a difference in the numbers as per phase 1 here and the phase 1 in the IFC. We do not take into consideration in this filter any welds, bolts, or any other items apart from parts. So that's why there is a difference. So we're now going to do the same for phase 2 and for phase 3. So like we did before, I'm going to double click on this custom category. I'm going to change the name to model phase 2. Again, it's the model that we're now looking at, not a reference item. We need phase 2. And again, I'm going to use profiles just for this example. And the same again for phase 3. So now we have a good breakdown of the model in regards to the phases. We have obtained that information from the IFC. So now your model matches exactly what is in your IFC, and you can continue to work from here. Now, once you're at this stage, the model has now been converted. I'm now going to synchronize our boundary boxes, and the items have now been added to those floors. So once you've now completed your model, we do have a lot of people asking for Uniclass or Omniclass information to be added into the model, and this information seems to come through at different points within the actual project, so it's not being set up at the beginning. You can use the organizer to output information into a user-defined attribute of the model, even if the user-defined attribute doesn't exist at present. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to create a new property set, which is going to be a user-defined attribute within the organizer. And we're going to add information into these parts that can then be exported within an IFC. So we're going to go back to our settings. And I'm now going to create a new property called Uniclass. And I'm going to state that this is a user-defined attribute. Again, text, and there isn't any units. And we can OK that. Now, in this assembly list, I'm going to add that new Uniclass property that I've created. And we're going to modify that assembly list to hold on to that information. Now, this property category section here allows you to add information into your model attributes. So the way to do this is by defining, first of all, which attribute you want the information to go into. So in this case, we're going to Uniclass. I can then state what information I want to add into that Uniclass. Now, this Uniclass code might not be 100% correct. It is just for representation purposes. So I've now stated in here that I want this value to be added to the Uniclass user-defined attribute. I'm going to modify that. And now this property set has changed. Now, to wait to add information to that Uniclass is I'm going to select the items within the model that I want the Uniclass to be added to. So at the moment, we can see that everything's blank. I will right-click on that property set and then say move the selected objects. Now that they have been moved, I need to synchronize, and then that Uniclass information will then be added into those items. So we can see now that the Uniclass has populated. That information has now been added into each individual part's UDA under Uniclass. Now, this can be used for anything. It doesn't need to be for export to IFC purposes. If you do have codes or property sets that you want to add into them, you can add a number of different user-defined attributes within the organizer, which can then be added into your model. Now, to see this information and what it can do for you on an export perspective, because we do have a lot of people now asking for information to be added into the model for the purposes of Uniclass and BIM outputs, I'm going to add that Uniclass information into the IFC property sets to be able to see them in the IFC in any third-party software. So the way to do this now is if I go into my file, export, IFC, we do have some presets in here at present. So the location breakdown will output the information as per the organizer site breakdown. So I'm going to use this and add some extra information into it. Now I also want to add the Uniclass information into my parts when I export them. So I'm going to create an attribute in this property set. So the name is Uniclass, the attribute exactly as per the input into the organizer is just called Uniclass, and we defined it as a user-defined attribute. And the type is going to be stringer, and I'm going to add this information into here. And then save and close. So I'm going to select a few items in here, and then I'm going to export using those new property sets that we've created. Now to check if that information has been added into the IFC, I'm going to open the IFC up in Trimble Connect. Now when I double click on an item, and go to its properties, we can scroll down and we can now see that the Uniclass information has been added, and we also know that this is part of section 1 and it's on floor 1 as well. So hopefully we have all learnt something new today, and we can see some benefits and uses of the organizer within our business environment on our models. We'll now look at some of the questions, and if there's anything that's quite long, I will have to get back to you by email. So thank you very much for listening today.